Alright guys, welcome back to the video. So in this one we're going to be making a simple multi-tray platter. So you guys may have seen these things, they're quite common in, in like the wedding industry and that. You'll have like a bottom dish, a middle dish, and a top dish, all of, kind of varying sizes, all with kind of a center shaft going between them. So what we're going to be doing is creating each of those individual platters on the lathe. I've already got all my blocks worked out here. The top one is going to be about 5 1/4 round. The middle one is going to be about 7 3/4, and then the bottom one is about 11 1/2. And so for the bottom tray, I glued up this 1 1/4 thick piece here. It's just a bunch of 8/4 pieces all glued together. For the base, I've got another one of these big 5x5 blocks. You guys may recognize this as it's the same style of base that I'm going to be doing that I did on the cake platter, but I'm going to be changing it up. I'm not a huge fan of the base on the cake platter. I think it's a little bit too modern. It's it's a little bit too necky, you might say. It just curves a little bit too much. And so what we're going to be doing instead is a 5-inch circle at the bottom, 5-inch circle at the top, and then tapering it to about 3 1/2 inches in the middle. And that'll give us just a nice curve in the middle, but it'll still be a nice hefty looking base. Because again, also on the other one, I noticed that I was just throwing away a lot of wood. So it just seems like kind of a waste to have this big chunk of wood here and to turn it like that. And then to go between each of our levels, we're going to be using just some normal 8/4 stock. We're going to be turning it to about 1 3/4 round, creating a couple tendons on it to go in between the dishes and that. And so we're going to start by turning each of the platters. We're going to start with the smallest one, just kind of work our way up, because the platters are not dependent on anything else. They can be their own specific dimensions, and then we can make up for whatever variance there is in the platters with our other pieces here. So the base, again, we're going to be basing that off of the bottom platter. Same thing with each of the center column pieces. We're going to be basing the heights off of the different, whatever seems right when I go through and, set them up. And once I have all three platters together, I can kind of go in, I can use some of my spacer blocks and that, and I can actually set up the heights and, figure out what I think is going to work best. Alright guys, so before we carry on, I just want to stop and talk about what I was doing with the Forstner bit there. So because this is our middle platter, we're going to have the post going up from the middle there and the post coming out at the bottom. So we obviously need to have a place to put tenons for both the top and the bottom connection pieces. And so because I need to be able to fit a 3/8 tenon on both sides, I basically need to drill a through hole all the way through this thing. Now obviously on the lathe I can't do that because on the back hole here, the chuck is all the way inserted inside here. And so that brings up one of the most important points about working with the lathe is knowing kind of where everything is. Because if you guys look back to one of my first videos on the lathe where I was making some plates, my first attempt at making that plate, I ended up hitting the screws that were coming through from the face plate because I took everything down too thin. Now, hitting some screws with your bowl gouge is not the end of the world. It sucks because it nicked up my bowl gouge pretty good and I still haven't been able to sharpen those nicks out, which is just kind of annoying, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas here, if I hit that Forstner bit into the chuck jaws, that would probably cause a lot of damage, would damage the machine, would destroy a $40 Forstner bit, would just all around not be a good situation. So it's really important to know how thick you're doing. So when I was doing this, I just barely nicked it, so I have just a nice lining up mark. And so I can see, just kind of looking through that hole, I do have about 3/16 of an inch before my Forstner bit would have ever contacted the jaws. So it's a perfectly good, safe maneuver. Again, if you're using some different kind of jaw where you got stuff right in the center there, again, just be aware of that. Make sure you're not going to contact anything. So what I did here, probably not the most advisable thing to by most turners, but it definitely worked. And so now all I have to do to actually make this a through hole is just take it over the drill press, line up the Forstner bit with that hole exactly, and just drill all the way through it, and we'll get a perfectly clean hole on either side. We don't have to worry about any kind of tear out. So we've got our top two platters done now. They're both looking spectacular. I really love turning white oak. I really was afraid of, if you look back on my Instagram and that, I was absolutely terrified to try turning white oak because I thought it was really going to splinter a lot. But after a couple times of turning it now, it is just such a beautiful wood because it comes out so nicely. It's nice and smooth. It polishes up beautifully. It really is a nice wood to work with. So it's been an absolute pleasure dealing with white oak in this circumstance.